sorry, kids, our rappers are so much better than yours. And part of it is they were building something, right? There was no blueprint to really go from. There was no Scarface or Scarface to sound like.
The art form is developed in a way now where it's hard to be as original and unique. As special as Kendrick Lamar is as a lyricist, and maybe it's also my age, I appreciate it, but it don't hit me the same way the stuff hit me when I was young. And it might be because no matter what, he is a version of someone else or an amalgamation of many other someones who were very popular. Because like I grew up loving Nas, and while Nas, you could argue, is some version of a previous rapper, ain't nobody know who the hell he was.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading, and thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy 12 Kyle. Man, check this out. On this episode, what we're going to do is we're going to respectfully and tactfully tell you to get off our lawn. And what I mean by that is like we're a little more seasoned than most of you listening. We're not going to come off as haters, but we're going to tell you distinctively why our rappers are better. Now, you heard the clip before we came on. Shout out to Bomani Jones and Dominique Foxworth. That was Bomani Jones's podcast, The Right Time with Bomani Jones podcast I listen to faithfully. And Bomani talked about, and Dominique agreed with him, that our rappers are better. But before I get into that, man, let me introduce my guest. Well, he's no guest. The guy's he's here every week. My man Eclectik is back in the building. E, what up, baby?
What's up? What's up? How's everybody doing out here in 12 land? It is me, Special Clec, the oldest in charge. We're here to talk about some stuff. Thank you for having me on the show. Being humble.
Oh man, anytime, man. I know, right? I came to this after hearing this episode from Bomani. And what happened was, just to give you guys some backdrop, Bomani and Dominique were talking about at the time of this recording, the recent Tiny Desk performance by none other than one of the greatest MCs out of Texas, out of Houston, in the game, period. Brad Jordan, aka Scarface, of the legendary Ghetto Boys.
He was good.
Before I even get started, Eclectik, did you see the Tiny Desk from Brother Face Mob?
Absolutely not. There's no way I was watching that.
Oh my gosh, look at this guy, man.
Listen,
anyway, folks,
it's very important. This is very important because we're going to get into this, and people are going to think that we think that the rappers or the MCs of our generation could do no wrong, and we loved everything they did. Let the record show. Nope, I don't love them all either. So, but the fact still remains.
Well, this is true. No, we don't love them all, and we don't,
What? No. I don't.
Time.
No.
Oh,
I don't.
You clearly.
You love everybody. You love everybody.
I hate a lot. I'm not gonna hate tonight. But yeah, it got me to thinking because Scarface did the Tiny Desk for NPR, and people loved it. They were talking about it as one of the greatest performances, and he just did some of his older songs. And if you relax, if you haven't seen or heard the Tiny Desk, I implore you, after listening to this episode, to go and listen to it and watch it on YouTube. Scarface did his thing. He really did his thing for about 30 minutes. And if you're a Scarface fan like me, you will really, really appreciate it. That being said, Dominique and Bomani, as I mentioned, they really dove into the idea of Scarface being a rapper who is 50 plus. I think he's like 53, 54 at the time of this recording. Being able to perform on Tiny Desk live with a band, acoustics, the whole nine, backup singers, and sound as good or maybe even better than he did when he recorded these songs some 20, 30 years ago, right? And so it got me to thinking, and I immediately wrote down when Bomani said it, our rappers are better than yours. Because I mean, like, from a seasoned OG perspective, I really feel like that's what it is. And of course, you know, some of you love this guy, some of you hate this guy. I had to bring eclectik on here because
whoa. No one hates this guy. What are we doing? What is happening now?
Several people hate you, sir. Not that you care.
No, I don't.
But you know, I think right. He really doesn't care. But yeah, I wanted to get an E on here so that we could talk about it because, like, and I wanted to just bounce some things off of you because, like, I really think that, you know, there's something to that. And I don't think that there's something to that, meaning because we're older, we're seasoned in hip hop, we're the old heads and we know better. I'm not going to sit there and say that at all because there are some very much younger current rappers that are really, really dope that I can listen to. But this fact remains that, you know, much like Bomani said in the clip, you know, we had rappers that we listen to that are great now that were great back then. Your Scarfaces and your Nas's and your Sean Carter's when he's motivated and so forth and so on. So, E, I guess I'll start with you. Why do you think, based on what you've heard as far as current rappers, why do you think that there's such a gap in between? If you take, you know what? Let me rephrase your question. Okay, so let's take instead of taking 7 MCs, let's take 3 MCs.
Okay.
I'll start with Drake, Kendrick Lamar, and J. Cole. Arguably 3 of the best current rappers right now. Correct? Would you agree with that?
No, but I would say they're probably the most popular or the most rewarded or awarded or streamed or whatever you would have.
Mm-hmm. And then, so let's take 3 from the golden era. I don't know. The aforementioned Nas. You know, let's keep it simple. Biggie, Jay-Z, and Nas, who in their prime. Why do you think that there's such a gap between Jay-Z in his prime, Biggie in his prime, Nas in his prime, whenever you deem their prime to be, and then moving forward to these 3 lyrical MCs in Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, and Drake? Why do you think there's such a huge gap and disparity as far as like what they talk about and how good they actually are?
Well, clearly I think that there's a talent level gap. I think there's a experience level gap, meaning these I don't consider Biggie, Jay-Z and Nas golden age, but whatever. Those guys experienced more or experienced a lot of lived life without a lot of the comforts that the younger people do, just by simple fact of the times. You know, Biggie on Juicy said Sega Genesis. Drake doesn't know Sega Genesis. He could picture this. Drake and Kendrick Lamar could absolutely picture this. That's the other thing. The gap comes from what is going on currently is just an addition or a version of what has already been done. So but what those older gentlemen were doing, they were doing it for the first time. So it didn't exist. So other than Big Mix or whoever the other guy was, nobody used a juicy beat before Big, except for, you know, the other guy.
Thanks.
And so that was the first time that you would hear that. Jay-Z came out with Dead Presidents and sampled Nas. Well, Nas had just came out. Nobody sampled Nas before. So, you know,
Good
so
point.
you have stuff like that. The other thing is hip hop, even before the Biggie, Jay-Z, and Nas, the rap music, because we didn't call it hip hop in the 80s. So rap music.
No.
People, I always liken it to basketball, where you have hoopers, and we did an episode a long time ago about what rapper would be, what basketball player, whatever.
Yeah.
Go listen to that if you guys can find it.
One.
But so my theory has always been this: there are people who are ballers who would play basketball because they love basketball. Then you have the ones that were playing to get into the league to make money and while out. If the NBA and the professional game didn't exist, those individuals would do something else and probably never pick up a basketball again. Whereas you had your Jordans and Birds who just played basketball because it was what they wanted to do. It was fun. They were good at it, this, that, and the third. So I think the difference is, and this is, again, no fault of the younger generation, because simply in the 80s and maybe a little bit into the 90s, there was no real money in hip hop. And so you listen, the entire decade of the 80s, nobody went platinum. If you went gold, you looked like you would have, that was it. Yeah. And so,
gold,
I mean,
platinum.
Yeah, I mean, you had your LL, but anyway. So, but there was no ulterior motive to get into it. There was no extra crazy exposure. There was no social media. There was shit in the 80s. For the most part, it was only like 5 TV channels. So it wasn't like you was out there for mad crazy fame. Right. And if you appealing to the youth, we wasn't coming to see you because we weren't old enough. So it's not like, so it wasn't, you was just out there for the love. And the other thing, before I let you take your show back, is because in the early stages of rap, the sole goal for the MC was to be recognized as super dope on the mic. That's all they wanted. I'm the king of this. I'm the best at this. I passed any MC contest. I rap better than you. My words are better than yours. That's it. It was never, I got more money than you. My car is better than you. You would talk about your car, but you would be like, I got one. But the whole thing was, I'm dope lyrically. I am dope on the mic. The DJs, my DJ is better than your DJ. My DJ is fast. He can cut crazy. That was it. It wasn't what he produced and whose song he was on. It was just being really dope at the craft. It was like anything else in America. If it was basketball, I'm dope on the court. If it was fucking a secretary, I can type this many words a minute. I'm nice at what I do. And now I think the difference is I'm making a lot of money doing this, and I got your girl.
Yeah, I think that's really kind of like where it is. I think you made some good points. I think part of it is like the thing I always talk to my sons about is like there's and I'll get to this point in a second. There's a stark difference between the levels of competition across the board. But going back to your point, you're right. Everybody got into it because they wanted to show people how dope they were and the fact that they could rap. And given the fact that there was no money involved, that made a huge difference. Now, I don't blame, this generation or Kendrick. I'll stick with the rappers. Kendrick, Drake, and Cole. I don't blame them because they can't help what time they were born or what generation they were born into. I will say this much, though. I think the money aspect piece of it has them doing different things, obviously, and the way that they have to go about getting the word out is definitely a lot more easier. And in some of that, with it being easier, the product that in which they're pushing is a little bit more watered down than what it was back then. Again, not speaking to them specifically, because there's going to be some Kendrick fans. They're going to be like, man, I can't believe you saying this about. No, trust me. I am fans of Kendrick and Cole. Drake, not so much. But I do respect the fact that y'all have named him the hottest in the game. And he's been the hottest in the game for, I don't know, going on 10 years, I guess. But I think, yes, sir.
You know the difference between.
I don't like him.
Well, I don't like any. I don't deal with any of these gentlemen. But what I'm saying is, you know what the difference is? The difference is people, the older people, and the people that came up, the MCs, the rappers in the 80s and early 90s. Yeah, early 90s, I guess. We never anointed anybody as anything.
Facts.
Big
facts.
It was just, look, we like these people. We listen to these people. This blew up. That's what it is. Anyone that is, I don't know, 30 something and up can attest to this. If you listen to hip hop, when in the 70s, 80s, nobody was the greatest of all time. Nobody was the greatest that year. Nobody was even the greatest that month. We just listened to what we listened to. It was no competition between fans. It was competition between rappers. And if they was dissing each other, we say, nah, they won that one because their words or that song was better than that song. But we didn't feel the need to have somebody be crowned as the best. Now DMC is the king of rock. It was dope. So people would say, nah, I'm gonna come get your crown. But it wasn't right. It was never that important to us. Again, I like in the basketball. It's like, hey, my favorite player is Jordan. My favorite player is Magic. I love Isaiah. Cool. Now, eventually we realized who the best was, but that didn't deter. Just because we figured out and we saw that Jordan was who Jordan was, that didn't make Adrian Dantley whack. It's just like, okay, that's what it is. Okay, we're good. Exactly. And no one has to fight. No one fought over it. It wasn't that serious. Like, I like He-Man. I like Lionel. Cool. The Thundercats didn't have to be better than everybody. And no one is. People are weird now.
And you know what? I think part of that is like, that's just a part of where these generations are. And again, you can't blame people for being born in what generation they've been born in. But I want to go back to something you said, and that's the next point I was actually going to make. So it's a great segue. Competition. What I want you to do before I talk about the competition of this generation, give the people who are listening who may not have been around and we'll just pick the golden era, whatever you deem the golden era to be. The golden era of hip hop for you, what was the competition like amongst rappers, not necessarily ones being pitted against each other, but just in the rap game, period? What was the competition like?
Well, the thing is, it was a competition. It was a competition to be heard because, again, another very important thing in the golden era, and I got the golden era as like, if I gave it a 10-year span, we say 84 to 94. If I was doing 10 years, maybe 85 to 95, but it was some really dope shit that came out of 84. So, but, right. So, but here's the thing, and this is very important to understand. The majority of the first half of the 80s going into the second half, hip hop rap was controlled by like 2 record labels. If you went on Def Jam, in the early 80s, nobody heard. I mean, you had Profile and Sleeping Bag and Tommy Boy. Tommy Boy came up as stuff going, but if you only get could get a deal from so many places. That's why a lot of dope songs was just singles. And people found somewhere to press something up, and we heard the singles, and these people never had albums because you couldn't even get deals like that. You would just be heard off your single, and maybe you make another single. Like a good way to put this: Roxanne Shante, who I love, who
you love her,
who quietly ran a big portion of rap. She was responsible for a huge thing of rap in like 84, 85, 86. Her first album didn't come out to 88. She had single after single after single. She had music videos, but she did not have an album. She didn't have a deal. Run DMC. Everybody loves Run DMC. We know Run DMC. Run DMC and Jam Master Jay. If you look at their first, 2 albums, Jam Master Jay is not on the cover. He was not a part of the group.
No.
So it's like, it was so hard. So anyway, so the competition was to get heard. It was to what is the word I'm looking for? It was to stand out and show that you were unique, show that you were dope, show that you were different. That is the main thing, one of the main differences between our quote generation and the subsequent generations is they prided themselves on not being like the other person. So when you had Rakim, arguably the greatest lyricist who've ever grabbed a microphone. Then you had Big Daddy Kane, and Big Daddy Kane's prime, people said that he was the greatest lyricist. And you also had Kool G Rap, who I think is A1 and B to Rakim as the greatest lyricist. All came out at the same time. They all came out at the same time, and the three of them could not sound more different than each other. You had rap groups who the people in their groups didn't sound like each other. And so at the same time that you had Kane, you had Bez, who Kane wrote for, and he still didn't sound like him. You had Easy and Cube, who he wrote for, and he still didn't sound like him. So
nothing like
you had all of these different groups and rappers, and the competition was, how can I stand out and still be seen as dope? And that's what eventually happened with the pop stuff when someone got really popular and they started doing stuff that wasn't necessarily air quote hip hop. It was shined on because it's like, all right, now you are being different, but you're not being dope anymore. You're being different for different sake, and you blowing up, but you're not blowing up like you. That's not what we do. You know, instead of a different shade of gray, you just pop it out in the periwinkle, and we're like, nah, man, what are we doing? And so, but the competition was crazy because you had to set yourself apart from the other people who are making music, sound different, but still be dope. And that is why a lot of times in the rap, it was like, yo, my style is like this, because it was all about your style, how you rhyme, how you flow. And then it turned into somehow, this is what everyone's listening to. You have to sound like this. Also, another very important thing, and I'm gonna give you your show back in a second, is
go ahead.
In the 80s and most of the early 90s, everyone's work stood on its own. There was no features. The only time that someone rhymed on something else is if either they produced it or they came up together in a crew. That was it. LL Cool J came out in 84, 85. He was huge. Radio, Bigger and Deffer, Walking with a Panther. That man didn't show up on nobody else's song until Rampage. He was
He was
never on another song. He was never. No one was on his album. He wasn't on nobody else's album. Kane. Kane did Rhyming with Biz because he wrote it, but it was nobody. He eventually let Scoop and Scrap rap, but that was it. It was so features wasn't a thing. Features wasn't a thing. Who produced it wasn't a thing. The only thing that was important was if it was dope, and if you had a DJ, was your DJ dope? That was it. That's all we cared about. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 1000%. I think that's one of the things that really you can see a stark difference. And I don't think it has anything to do with technology. It's just, like you said, even something as small as features. Because, like you said, LL being a prime example of not being on nobody. If you weren't in, I mean, it was kind of like an unwritten rule. Like, one, a rapper didn't want to get shown up by another rapper on another beat, so no, it was no thing of, okay, hey, let me go, if I'm Run, let me go get on this LL track, even though we could be on the same label. But yeah, if you were outside of being in somebody's crew, Ice Cube wasn't going to go jump on somebody else's record. That wasn't the features thing, particularly like you said, in the early to mid 80s, going into the 90s. That's when you started seeing some type of features. But even then, it was kind of few and far between. As far as this generation, I think I don't.
Hold on, real
like
quick.
I said, I don't knock them. Go ahead.
One of the dope things about that feature era, jumping on someone's song from the late 80s, mid to late 80s, early 90s, was typically almost 99%. It was on the last song of the album.
Yeah.
And it was never on the liner notes. It was always a surprise of who was coming on the song. And then once someone heard it, that's when the word got out, such and such is on this song, rapping with such and such. That was it. You would just listen, and then all of a sudden you would hear a different voice. You're like, wow, I can't and that was it. Like Burn Hollywood Burn with PE, and who was it? Kane and Cube.
Kane, yeah, and Ice Cube. Yep.
It was just like, how did they even meet?
Right.
Like,
How they down? How are they even down with each other?
it would be crazy stuff like that we would, and that would make us hype that. And then when it got to the mid 90s, you would just look at the back of the CD cover and be like, oh, such and such is on this song. Let's listen to this. Or we would read it in the source. Such and such has a song with this person. But that's the other thing. We had to go and physically seek out music, find what we liked personally. We would listen to everything, find out what we liked, and then that's what we rocked with, and that's what we would tell our other friends about. And then as our friends would either like it or rock with it, or they would go find something that they thought was better because everything was a competition. So then they would go find something and then not let you dub that. But because it wasn't somewhere where you could go, because back like in the 80s, the early 80s, you couldn't even go to the record store and listen to the stuff unless you bought it.
No.
If you it wasn't open. So it wasn't like the headphone stations that they had in the 90s where you can go and listen to something. We used to blind buy stuff. That album cover looks dope. I heard of them. I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna listen to it. It was a crapshoot. It could have been whack. Could have been one of the greatest things of all time.
No, I agree, and I think even as I move forward to talk about, you talked about that era, even talking about this era, and again, I'm going to stay with Cole, Kendrick, and Drake just for the point.
Damn,
I think
Kyle hates women. No Nicki, no Cardi, no Meg. I'm
keeping it up. Wait, no, you're not gonna do that. I'm keeping it to these three just for this point. So here's the thing. When you talk about competition, like I can see and hear the competition in Cole. I can see and hear the competition in Kendrick. I can see the confidence and somewhat competition in Drake, because I think Drake hears what people are saying about him and his music. Anytime he switches a style or he switches his singing or whatever he's doing into something else. So I do see that. What I don't see is I don't see the competition amongst their peers in masses. Yeah, you might have a JID over here, or you might have a Larry June over here. I just don't see the competition in the game of rap, period, wherein everybody's gunning for the top or everybody's gunning to be heard. Going back to your point, E, it's hard to kind of gun to be heard when you, at the push of a button, everybody can hear you. And here's one of the things that I think kind of frustrate me, just as a fan in general, and just stepping back and seeing what I see. Okay, I'll use Kendrick as an example. Okay, so Kendrick goes to IG, puts up this IG post. He's in this chair, and this is imaginary. This didn't happen. I don't want y'all to think something was coming. So he's sitting in the chair. He's got his back to the camera, and he's just rocking back and forth in the chair, right? Rocking back and forth in the chair, and then all of a sudden you hear some music come on, and in a 15-second reel for Instagram, you hear Kendrick's voice. So it's a song that you've never heard before. And so now everybody in the comment section is like, oh, wow, I can't wait. New shit coming. Oh, my God. And trust me, I get it. If you were able to play Public Enemy before I heard, if you were able to play It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back in 88 before I could actually hear it or hear any clip, I mean, if you gave me a clip of it, I probably would go crazy too. I just don't see where in the fans and then also the artists, I don't see the competition. And I don't see the competition where the fans are pushing the artists to be competitive with each other. What I see is, and again, I'm standing on a hill because I'm in my yard, right? I'm in my yard, I'm raking. I'm the old guy in the yard on my little hill, and I'm talking to the kids walking by, the young whippersnappers, the young Thundercats. What I'm seeing is fans, the Drake fans go after the Kendrick fans. The Kendrick fans go after the Cole fans. And here's the thing, and I want everybody to be clear on this. There was no such thing as the Run DMC fans versus the LL fans. Because like E said a little earlier, we were just fans. Like, quick question, E, who's your favorite basketball player of all time?
Magic Johnson.
Okay, mine's Michael Jordan. See how simple that is? He didn't say, oh, Jordan suck. He's not the GOAT.
Especially because he is.
I could literally. but even if I pulled out my phone and I went on Twitter right now and I typed up, man, Jordan is the greatest of all time, I guarantee you. Or if I said Kendrick Lamar is the greatest of all time, I guarantee you there would be 2 or 3 retweets, and then the rest would be arguments. How can you say that when such and such and such is still alive? And I think, and no, I mean, that's my opinion. We're fans.
Well,
if you're a fan of Kendrick, cool. If you're not a fan, cool. Go ahead.
The thing is, like, one, like we were saying earlier, it never mattered to us who was deemed the greatest because, well, one, in our defense, it was still being built. This is the whole classic argument. You can't call something a classic 10, 20, 30 years. It got to at least be like 50 years before something can be a classic.
Right. Oh, they put out classes each week.
Yeah, an instant classic is an oxymoron. But the thing is, the fans aren't really fans. They're posturing because now they can be seen, they can be heard, and they just want to be. They just want to oppose something. There was no. Listen.
Mm-hmm.
There was no crazy Aretha Franklin hive back in the day. It was just like the music.
Aretha hive.
Yeah.
Did Diana Ross have a hive too?
Oh yeah, it wasn't the petty pods or something. It was just people listen to the music comes out, we love it. But again, we didn't have a forum or a platform to go in and be like, my team is better. But because even if we did, we'd be like, so shut up, who cares? It honestly doesn't matter. The fandom is not real fandom. It is tribalism. And tribalism is not fandom. You're not a fan of the actual product or the what the person produced. You just like that person, and you say, well, that's going to be my person, and no matter what they do, I'm going to roll with it. That's not being a fan of the music. That it absolutely is not. It's tribalism, and a lot of that is just crazy, because like you said, someone to put out a snippet of something. This generation, these couple of generations are crazy. They are releasing track lists, and people are going crazy over track lists. I wish I would care about, oh man, they got a song called No Shoelaces. I can't wait to hear you. That could be the worst song in the history of songs.
Track list. I knew that things were headed down the wrong path when probably about 5, 6, 7 years ago, they would release who was producing such and such's album. And I'm like, that's not good, because I never picked up a LL album to see who produced it. I can't tell you who produced I'm Bad on LL's record.
I think it was Battle
Cat.
Do I know
who produced it? Yeah. That was gonna be my first guess. But I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know who produced most of the albums that I listened to in the 80s and the 90s. Do I know offhand? Yeah, I mean, but if you just randomly ask me who produced I don't know, Summertime, I don't know.
The important thing is you didn't care.
I didn't care. No, and even
that's
to this
the
day, I
important
still
thing.
don't care.
No, who cares a shit?
and so that leads me to my next question. The other we talked about competition. The other C I want to talk about is creativity, which you touched on a little earlier, but I want to go back to it. I think one of the other reasons why our generation is better is because we were definitely more creative, because you didn't have a choice. You didn't want to sound like the next guy or girl, and you wanted to be creative. So, like, case in point, there's a pretty popular guy on the social media platforms, a guy by the name of B Dot. B Dot every year picks out and lists his top 10 rap albums of the year. And I'm going to read to you the list that, for those of you who know who B Dot is, most of you probably don't, but
I have no idea who this person is.
I've seen B Dot a couple of times because I think he hosts a podcast with Elliot Wilson, formerly of the Source magazine. That's the only reason why. If B Dot came in here if he came in my house with a B Dot jersey on, I probably would think he played for the New York Mets. So here's the albums, and he lists them from 1 to 10. Number 1, Killer Mike, with the album Michael. Number 2, Larry June and the Alchemist, The Great Escape, which is kind of interesting because Larry June and the Alchemist. The Alchemist is the producer. So there again, I mean, I don't need to know that the Alchemist produced the album, but I guess it's cool. The album is called The Great Escape. Currency and JD for Motivational Use Volume 1. Central C and Dave, Split Decision. I've never heard of Central C or Dave. Yo Gotti with an album called I Showed You. Jack Harlow, which is a song with an album called Jackman. Real quick, have you ever heard a Jack Harlow song before?
Have I heard a Jack Harlow song? I've heard one, maybe two. I think he performed on Saturday Night Live.
I'm convinced I've never heard a Jack Harlow song. Number 7, Boozy Badass, Going Through Some Things. Number 8, Key Glock with Glaucoma 2. Number 9, Nasir Jones.
Hold on. I do not know or have ever heard of Key Glock before, but that is a dope ass title.
I heard the name.
That title is dope as hell.
Yeah.
I would listen to it just for that title. I like it. I like that.
Yeah, Glaucoma 2. Glaucoma 2. I think I've heard the name before. I'm pretty sure I don't know who Key Glock is. Number 9, Nas with Magic 3. And number 10, Babyface Ray with The Summer's Mine. Now, I'll be honest. There's a bunch of, with this list, I heard Nas. And I heard a couple of tracks from Killer Mike. But I mean, like, there were other albums. I know Dave East put out a pretty good album. Who else? I think the Sky Zoo album came out this year. Just to name a few. And I don't want to get into a list, but even in listing some of the names of the albums that I just listed that is on B-Dot's top 10, whoever B-Dot is, I just don't, in the artists that and the artists that I do know that he listed on here, I don't see the creativity. Now, as he just pointed out, there's some creativity in that name, Glaucoma 2. But outside of that, I really don't see a lot of creativity from these artists. And don't get me wrong, I don't want you to think I'm the old guy on the hill who doesn't listen to any current music. I do listen to some.
That would be me.
I like the kid JID. That would be eclectic. I like the kid JID. I'm going to get around to Larry June at some point because I keep hearing people talk about it. Currency is bad, so forth and so on. But I just don't see the creativity. And I think where my frustration comes in as a fan, and another reason why I think our rappers are better is because I think this generation of rappers have access to have way more creativity with technology, and everything seems, well, I don't want to say everything. A lot of things seems, sounds, feels the same, and looks the same. And we can't get, I almost forgot. I think the great Flo Milli dropped an album this year. Can't forget about Flo Milli from Mobile, Alabama. But my question to you is, like I said, I'm frustrated because I think this generation has access to technology that can make them more creative. The generation that you're speaking of, how creative were they? Because, like you mentioned earlier, nobody looked, the sound, or felt the same.
Well, the thing is, shouts to Ayo Technology, but it's not the technology. Now the thing is, you can say this: they have all of the music that was created up until now to use, though, because you got to think in the 80s we were sampling James Brown and some 70s soul because that's all you had. And then in the 90s,
that's all you
they were sampling the 80s because, okay, we got a new decade worth of stuff. So that's why they were sampling that. That's why Puff and them was sampling 80. Like, oh, we grew up on this. And then, so now the weird thing is they don't even sample right now. They'll sample the same thing that's been sampled 15, samples. 20 times. No, but like the fucking, like the women, they're doing a lot of samples, but you get like, how many times are you going to sample the message? I mean, Cube sampled it already, and then like you sampling the same things. How many times are you going to sample Diana Ross from More Money? You're going to keep sampling this. You're sampling the same ones. That's the problem. Or you're not even reaching back to sample something. Like, I mean, I don't want them to bastardize these songs, but if you're going to sample, go and grab a Lucchini or go and grab, Broken Language. But anyway, so it's not necessarily the technology. It's, like I said earlier, it's the experience. It's life. They haven't experienced real life, when a rapper in the 80s, the 90s, can rhyme about sitting outside, watching the people go by, this person's drug dealing, this person pulled up in his new car, I got sent to the store to get this. None of that happens now. So, no. You're not going to listen to somebody rap about ordering Postmates.
Well, I mean, it's something you talk about all the time on your podcast, like where the story rhymes.
Exactly. They don't have any stories because they don't go outside.
And that's the thing. Like, and I'm sure I speak V when I say this. In that generation, our generation of rappers, anybody that you deem a great rapper, I don't care if it's Cool G Rap, I don't care if it's Big Daddy Kane, I don't care if it's Ice Cube, they got at least one or two great story raps. You had to have it. It was a must.
out of the GOAT conversation if you don't have at least 3 dope story rhymes.
So I guess I would eliminate Drake.
Listen, I don't know what he'd be telling stories about.
You know what?
Nah, he could have told a whole bunch of stories about Kiki and his other conquests. All I'm saying is, it's about experience in life. They don't have anything to talk about, so they talk about the same things. What is the other person talking about? They're talking about their chains. All right, well, I'm gonna give me some chains and talk about mine too, because I don't have anything else to talk about. Like, you got to think about a lot of the earlier generations. Music was, their first album was basically amassed their entire life up into that album. And so all the things that they've seen, all the things that they've done up into that album, then when you fast forward to this generation, they haven't really seen or done much. They haven't really had to, because again, if you are born and high-speed internet exists, you haven't really struggled. So you haven't really been through anything. If you were born and there's already Uber, what, you're not sent to the corner store, you're not getting bullied and harassed, you're getting bullied online. You haven't gotten bullied. Right. So you haven't gotten beaten up. You haven't had to wear some bullshit to school and get teased about it. You haven't had no food fights in the cafeteria. No girl has broke your heart. If she did, she broke your heart on Facebook. so you haven't gone through
via text.
Yeah, you haven't gone through enough shit to even talk about something in a dope way. So you're forced to talk about the same things over and over again, because for whatever reason, people refuse to go back. They'll go back and grab a beat, but they won't go back to listen to anything for inspiration. They won't go and listen to a Dana Dane or a Special Ed and be like, wait a minute, what the? Special Ed dropped the whole thing about how dope his life was and how much he got. He had 7,400 scooters and had a dog with a solid gold bone. Meanwhile, did the video in a junkyard. We were just like, hey man, this is dope. That's how we said it. And that was a great platform. Music video was a great platform to get your personality out, get your style out, and get your point of view out, and to introduce yourself to the world. Now, people are introduced via Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and then they'll make a video. There's no platforms. Yeah, there's no platform that shows videos. No one's clamoring to go run and see the video, but you can see the video, and the videos that they make look like Instagram stories and TikTok. So they're just longer versions because the Instagram and TikTok cut you off after a certain amount of minutes. So there's no creativity. Listen, Special Ed was on the street in a hovercraft. You can in his music video. So the creativity is lost because there's not a good there's not ample sources to feed off of, to get from, and they're not looking back to try to even parody this stuff. I mean, if you think of, you had Steady B made a song called My Benz, talking about his Benz. Run DMC made My Adidas, talking about the sneakers. Heavy D made Nike. And so you would look at it and be like, see, these people back then, they was bragging about their stuff just like they bragging about it now. Yes, but it was creative how they did it. Also, then you had Sir Mix-a-Lot come in with My Hoopty. He talking about, I got the most fucked up car ever. And it was just as dope as anybody else's song.
Yeah.
It was creativity.
loved it.
He
We loved
basically could have just looked back and said, "Oh, they talking about, you know what? I'm gonna talk about how fucked up my ride is, and that's what I'm gonna do." Biz Monkey made a whole song about him getting played by a girl, and it turned up to be one of the biggest hits. It was so. It's not always. It wasn't always. Look how dope I am. NWA, Eazy-E. They went and robbed a bank and got caught and put in jail. It's so every day that people are so afraid to look lesser than or not cool and not tough. The other thing is the 80s, some of the 90s, they never took themselves that serious. They talk all of this stuff, but they would just have fun. The problem is when the younger people were born, they looked at it and took the wrong parts of them. Oh, they got guns and they be killing. Yeah, but listen to 2 songs later, they talking about something completely different. So you will listen to all the killing, but then you won't listen to our people as oppressed or oppressed, or pick up a book or read this or don't do drugs. You only listen to those 3 songs. Mm-hmm. So it's weird, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is weird in a lot of ways, and I think as I was listening to you, I just thought about something that I heard the other day. Like, I think when you talk about our rappers being better than their rappers, our rappers honestly had to pay dues. You had to pay your dues. You couldn't just get on. Like, for as dope as people loved and talked about this Tiny Desk performance by Scarface, even as an accomplished rapper, before he became an accomplished rapper, he had to pay his dues in Texas, in Houston. And Houston at the time that he came out wasn't a hotbed for rappers. You know what I'm saying? It was Jay Prince, Rap a Lot, and that was it. Like, there wasn't any other. I'm sure there was competition, but I mean, at the time, he still had to pay his dues. We hear all the time about DJs who had to come up carrying records into the clubs and stuff like that. And that was, you may have had to carry, like, Redman had to carry EPMD's records or DJ Scratch's records before he could even get on the mic and rap for Eric Sermon and Paris Smith. And that was a guy who we look at now as an accomplished MC, but he came from a humble beginning as far as his start. And that's how these rappers, they built character, because everybody couldn't just get on. You had to pay your dues before you got on. Now, bruh, if you got a microphone and a computer, I can make a rap song tonight. And if it blows, if it goes quote unquote viral, and then all of a sudden, if I get 100,000 followers on the 12 Kyle podcast, let's just say I get 1 million followers, then I will have these rap labels competing for me, because 1, I have a following, as they say, and then 2, I have a hit. But I mean, nobody's looking to cultivate the artist either. So I blame some of that on record labels, but then I also blame the fans too, because this generation of fans haven't asked and demanded more from the rappers than they should have.
You know what? You know what? Right about that? Because what you just said, that you can make a song right now, it could go viral. People will be trying to get you on everything, commercials. The people are going to be dancing on TikTok to your song. And so you can finish the point that you're about to make. The worst part about this is all of that is true, and the song doesn't have to be good.
Not at all.
That's the problem.
Not at all. I always use Old Town Road by Lil Nas X. First of all, his name is Lil Nas. He shouldn't be Lil Nas. Nas's name shouldn't be shared with anybody. But Lil Nas X, bless his heart. I don't know the guy personally, but I think when I listen to that song, Old Town Road, that song, from the first time I heard it to the last time that I heard it, it sounds like he was playing around in the studio or wherever he was, and he made a song jokingly with his friends. And all of a sudden, this song takes off. And now he is burdened. He is hit with the burden of becoming a rapper when he probably never had any ideas to rap. That's just my personal take on it. But no, the song, like you said, everything else gets lost in the shuffle because it's not about the music anymore. It's about your marketing. It's about your promotion. It's about who you're dating, who you're, what the streets are saying, what what the blogs and the shade room and sites like that are talking about. It's about everything but the music. So when people come with the music, when the Kendricks and the Coles and the J. Coles and the Kendrick Lamars come with the music, and Drake, the music is secondary. So what happens is the music will come out and it's like, oh man, this Drake album is the greatest album. I can't see what else. I can't wait to see what he does next. I mean, he just dropped the album 2 hours ago and you're already looking forward to what's next. Wherein, listen, if Ice Cube dropped an album in January of 1989, you wasn't getting another album anytime soon. So you had to love it and cherish it and listen to it for however long.
Also,
I mean, and so, I think in a lot of ways the fans got spoiled too. Go ahead.
Also, and listen, I know that you listen to these people. I don't.
These people.
But I think, now, I mean, I'll hear some stuff in passing and let the record show. I know a lot about newer stuff, probably more than he does, but he has kids too. So anyway, my thing is this. I think a lot of this, because I listen to the popular stuff when people say, yo, such and such came out, I'm like, all right, it's a classic. I'm like, let me listen to it. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, it's not. But I think it's the ugly girl theory. My ugly girl theory. And this is my ugly girl theory. Uh-oh. If you are around, let's say, 5 women that you would deem not your type, you're not attracted to. They're not attractive to you. Mm-hmm. Okay, you follow me so far?
I'm with you. I'm leaning in on this one.
And you're there with them for an extended period of time. Eventually, 1 or 2 of those 5 will be the attractive ones of the 5. Now, at face value, you walk into the room, ain't nothing there for you. You in that room 3-4 hours, you're like, you know what, old girl, she ain't that bad. Compared
especially if I start drinking.
Compared to the other 3. So to me, when people are putting out this music that for the most part is, let's say, subpar. Let's say the music is unattractive. And someone says something clever, or someone is kind of cute, or someone has someone on one of those things that you like, all of a sudden, that particular artist or song is the shit, where really, at face value, none of it is. So it's like,
I like what you did there.
Yeah. So even if you go back to the 70s where it was, well, I'm the this and the that, and I'm the this and the this, and people are like, oh, cool. And then a couple of years later, someone will be like, well, I'm the this and the this and then the that and the that and the that and the that. You're like, oh shit. Oh my God. This is the greatest thing ever.
Right.
And but
no, I get it. I get it.
Like, I know that these guys are great per the sample that these people have, but I listen to it with the I just walked in ears, not that I've been sitting in it and staring at these people, and then I'm like, this is not good. This is not good. But everyone else is like, oh, yeah. I used to think that, but then okay, it's the ugly girl theory. You just been hanging out with it now. All of us, yeah, I get it. I
like your ugly girl theory. I will say this much, because like you said, you will surprise me. You every now and then I'll hit you up and I'll ask you, and you be like, yeah, I heard such and such's album, and I'm like, wow, you actually heard it. But it's because somebody said, yo, E, check this out, and you listen, and convincingly will give it a listen.
Yeah, and if
wherein
someone
I'll
asks,
probably bypass it.
if someone asks my opinion on
Go ahead.
something, if someone asks my opinion on something, I will go listen to it all before I ultimately trash it. But
I won't.
we've had our Outcast discussions. You're like, well, this guy this guy hates Outcast. I don't hate Outcast.
He does. He hates Outcast.
I don't hate Outcast. I hate Outcast as much as he hates women.
I love women.
Okay,
I'm
then.
married to one.
So, she was on Eazy-E's album. But so what I'm saying is, I go and I listen to all of the stuff, and then I come back. I'm like, it wasn't for me. Like we had the Missy conversation. I went and listened to her whole discography, and I came back like, yeah, no, it was terrible. But I'm not going to just say it just because I don't like a particular song or a particular group. I do not hate Outkast. I just don't like any of their music.
Right.
That's it.
Man, listen. This has been a great conversation. I think in conclusion, I think it's I wanted to do this episode because I wanted people to see and just really expound on what Dominique and Bomani were talking about.
I had a fundamental problem with Dominique.
What problem did you have with Dominique?
The end of the shit was saying, well, Nas is another version of someone, but big people don't know who it is. You don't know who it is. Listen.
No, you don't know who it is.
Yeah, I'm like, you can't say, well, Drake is just a this, and then but then when Nas came out, he was super original. He was the new Rakim. Well, he was really the new Coogee Rap.
Yeah.
And so just because
you can hear the influences, and
just because you
go ahead.
didn't listen to Coogee Rap in the 80s, don't mean that nobody did. It's a succession to all of these things, you know. So it's like,
yeah, man,
and it's getting watered down the further we go.
That's sadly that's true, and I think that's a part of the problem, because you don't see where the newer generation uses or have been influenced. Because if somebody comes out now and they say, okay, well, I was influenced by Wayne, okay, cool, that's cool, but Wayne is not an old school artist. You know, he may be old school to them. To a 20-year-old, yeah, Wayne is old school because Wayne got to be touching 40 right now. But he's not an old school artist. And I think sometimes these rappers probably could do themselves a service and go a little bit further back and pull something from the generation before them. I'm not saying that you got to be the next LL or the next Rakim, but just understand where the foundation came from and go back to it. But yeah, like I said, I wanted to do this episode, man, because that talking point of what they had really struck home. The Tiny Desk from Scarface was incredible. I've watched it like 2 or 3 times, and I really appreciate, one, Scarface being here, because Scarface almost checked out of here, due to COVID, and I think he had a kidney transplant, which he ended up getting a kidney from his son. So really, and I'm all for seeing my rappers that I grew up with grow old. And I mean, we saw a lot of that this particular calendar year in 2023 with, the honoring of hip hop as it turned 50. Now, I would love to see hip hop. Well, that's another story for another day with this guy. But I'd like to see more of these tours. LL went on the Force tour with the Roots and did a killing. And meanwhile, some of the current artists, the current rappers, were struggling to sell out some of these smaller arenas. And the Force tour sold out everywhere it went. And I mean, but it was a smorgasbord of old school hip hop artists that could still rock a party. LL still puts on a great show. The Roots put on a great show. KRS-One, who didn't perform, puts on a great. I mean, like the list goes on and on. So I think I would like to see that continue, but I would also like to see this generation take more pages from the previous generation, from the golden era, from those people, because I think that will ultimately help them become better at their craft.
They don't care. They are getting paid. They are getting laid. They are getting notoriety. They are being loved by all. They don't care. The last thing that I want to say, in reference to the generation before another, because and to piggyback off of caring, and I did a whole podcast episode on when it was called. It's called When Hip Hop Cared.
When hip hop cared, I remember that episode.
And you will never listen. And you're not supposed to say never, but I'm gonna say it because I'm me. You will never have a heal or a self-destruction with these people. Like there were songs and albums dedicated.
All in the same gang, maybe.
All in you not no. Look at put it like this. Look at all of the stuff that's been going on since the 90s. Way worse than everything that they was rapping about, and no one has made a single song about nothing. No one's they promote it. They are part of it. They record it on their fucking phones. They put it as a part of their rollout. The bad stuff. This is how they got popular. He was like, oh, well, where did such and such come from? They got this new song. Oh yeah, I know him because he beat his girl up 2 years ago. Oh, okay. Then I guess we should listen to him. But you'll never get your You Must Learn and your Black Cop and there was so many songs and albums and movements. Anything Public Enemy did, Fight the Power. All this shit that was going on. How was there not put it like this? And then I'll because I can go on forever about this. I'll say it simply like this. Can you imagine? Could you imagine the music and the albums that would have came out in say 87, 88, even 91 if the Black Lives Matter movement happened then?
Wow. Ooh, man, listen.
Now, while you think about that, then think of what we actually got, which is nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
That's all I'll say.
The times were the music wasn't reflected in the times, and that's crazy when you think about everything that happened for the Me Too movement, for the Black Lives Matter movement. That period of music, and I liken it back to, although it's on the R&B side, I liken it back to the 70s when Marvin made What's Going On. Marvin Gaye, for those of you who don't know Marvin.
Yeah. Mercy Me.
There's Mercy Me. The music reflected the times, but history's going to look back and say, well, where was hip hop in this movement? The music didn't reflect it. I mean, not in the masses, it did. Maybe one or two songs here or there, but not as the way it should have.
Yeah, not end up being a jam. It's like we still jam to these songs that was like, again, Me Too, Black Lives Matter, nothing. We got just off the Tawana Brawley, look what we got.
Fight the Power, yeah. So, I mean, in the video, Tawana Brawley, Reverend Al.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great way to land this plane. We want to thank you all for tuning in to the 12 Kyle podcast. Remember, this podcast drops every Thursday at midnight. From time to time, we drop bonus episodes on Sundays at midnight. You can follow me across the board, 12 Kyle podcast on all the socials. Also TikTok. We're on TikTok. You're going to see more video content there.
Millennial.
And this guy here, he's going to be back. He's always here, but he'll be back for more episodes. But before we get out of here, tell them where they can find you at.
Just look. But eclectic.
He said, just look.
Just look. Look over your shoulder, like little Mike said. Look.
Look over your shoulder. Mike, you don't tell no chick to look over her shoulder.
They called her honey too. Like, yeah. Nah, that was some smooth shit. Yeah, look over your shoulder. I'm about to go get me about to go give me a lollipop. ECLECTIK, at eclectic podcast, at Tweet Rhymes Life, at Encyclopedia Hip Hop. We got hip hop podcasts. We got nostalgia 80s and 90s podcasts. All things evergreen. So if you find it, listen to all of them, and let's argue.
And they will argue. Like I said, you found us, you hear us. So we're, like I said, there's gonna be more content, definitely more content coming up in 2024. So that's gonna do it for us. Once again, another episode from me and my boy Eclectic. We're talking about why our rappers are better than yours. And feel free, if you disagree, hit us up on Twitter. If you're on Spotify and you're listening, there's a comment section. You can comment there and tell us what you like, what you didn't like about it, and then we'll rebut.
Yeah, I have no problem doubling down. We could do a part 2 where you give us a list, and we'll tell you, we'll give you a rapper that's better than everyone on your list.
And if you're really, really good, we might invite you to come on the podcast and debate it with us. If you're good. But now, most of you aren't that good. But anyway, that's going to do it for us. So for my boy Eclectic, I'm your boy 12 Kyle. We'll catch you guys next time. 5 G's.
Look over your shoulder.